Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our Masters of Product interview. In our studio today, I have my good friend Joel Hames. He is the CPO of Subject, an online education platform, most popular known as the Netflix of education. In addition to the awesome work he's doing at Subject, Joel also has 30 years of product experience, most recently the CPO of Paper, and prior to that, the VP of Product at PowerSchool and Schoolology. As for me, I'm your host, Mustafa Kapadia. I actually help product organizations 10x their productivity with AI. Joel, I'm so happy that we can do this.
Thank you,
Welcome to the show.
Mustafa. I'm excited to be
And
here.
this is, you and I have talked all the time. And so, when we started talking about this interview about how the impact of AI on education, I just jumped on the opportunity to make it to invite you as a guest. So why don't we start there, if that's okay with you? It's like just broad strokes. I mean, a lot of people talk about AI and how it's going to disrupt industries. Education is one of those things that they keep saying that this is going to be a huge impact. Let's start with big picture. How do you see AI impacting the education world?
It's a great question, and it's one that I think about quite often. We know when we build a product, we have to build the very best next thing that we can. But we have to have
Yes.
that North Star vision. Like, what are we looking at, and what do we think is
Hmm.
going to happen over time? Thinking about the
Right.
impact of AI in general, AI and similar technologies on the future of education, I kind of have a vision in my head based on the experience in my
Yes.
schools and building products. And it's this: we know there is fantastic research about what generates the best possible outcomes for students. There are meta
Right.
analyses that have been done that target the specific strategies that move the needle the most, regardless of a student's background.
Yes.
And if we think about some of those, we think about things that all fall under an umbrella that has been historically a marketing term, which is personalized learning. What is personalized learning?
Yes.
Well, at its
I mean, that is the holy
right,
grail,
it's the
right?
holy grail. And we've been trying, like, products in the past have had some sense of like dynamic pathways through your learning. But at the end of the day, they've been limited to a very small set of strategies or content. They've been mostly vendor driven, and schools and students haven't seen the change.
Yeah.
So, what does AI look like in the long run? Imagine this: imagine that every day that you want to learn something, every day that you're being asked to learn something, maybe you're taking a high school course with Subject. Maybe you're upskilling or reskilling as you transition jobs in mid career. Every day you come in, what is presented to you is rooted in high quality academic content, research, and
Right.
rigor. Also has been specifically crafted for you, Mustafa. Like, let's say you want to
Right.
know about something about auto repair, and I don't. You may know a lot already. I don't know, but
Yes.
you want to learn more. And based on what you've learned in the past, how you've interacted, the timing that you like to learn, some of the
Right.
all this various data that can feed into that. There's something specifically generated for you. It's rooted in how an automobile actually works, but video, the
Yes.
content, the assessment, the formative assessment, this kind of encouragement that happens along the way, the fine tuning, all is automated through AI. It creates a truly personalized experience. We still have educators and we can still have research informing the underlying approaches that are taken. But what I experience as a learner, what you experience, is completely transformed. It is unique path.
Completely different. It is a product person's dream job, right? Because you literally are taking the individual, which is your customer or your user, which is a student in this case, and for literally customizing to every aspect of the way they learn. And my kids complain about this all the time, right? I mean, I have kids who go to public school and they're bored because it's a one size fits all, right? And so when at least the promise of customizing based on their needs, and they're all at different levels, right? Some are advanced maths, and so they want to move forward at a faster pace, and it just is not possible
Yeah, it's pace. It's also
right now. So the fact is that AI can do that is
yeah, and it's
fantastic.
pace. It's also if you follow me on LinkedIn, right? We probably way too much about my running journey. I totally got into it recently. And what if I want to understand something about algebra through the lens of running? Running might be
Yeah.
considered something that I would think about in my PE class or in a sport. But maybe they're not maybe, we can immediately think of connections between running, my interest in that, how I would learn math.
Yeah,
And this can extend to science, especially biology. So suddenly examples and activities that I might undertake are now specifically crafted around the things that are going to make it the most concrete possible learning experience that I can have.
perfect. Now let's take it a step further. Is that okay? So I understand the future, and I think the future is fantastic, and the things that the promise of AI is great. So, but we're of course not there yet, right? And we are very much early in that revolution. So tell me how what you're doing right now at Subject, how are you creating this future? What are you currently experimenting with, or what are you trying to do that gets us closer and closer to this future that you just talked about?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing we'll talk about this in a little bit is the experimentation that has to be done to figure out and tune exactly
Yeah,
where AI or where any technology can intersect with the value you're creating. Here, it should be no secret. Anyone following subject would know that one of the major efforts we have underway is to make our incredibly engaging videos in our curriculum accessible to students any
mm,
language that they have been raised with. These are English language learners who
right,
need access to academic concepts in their home language to better grasp them. They are on probably an English journey, but learning biology in English when you're just starting out can be very complicated and difficult. So what we're doing is using AI to simplify that, to bring that quality, bring that engagement. We're bringing it to every single student, regardless of that background. So
right.
that's one example. So this is impacting the way our videos are generated. It's impacting how our curriculum is translated. We're
Mm,
keeping a person in the middle to make sure the quality is high, but it's accelerating our ability to meet kids
yeah,
there. That's an example of what we're doing.
nice. So are you actually using AI right now to generate video and content to customize to the user? And have you rolled that out, or are you still in the
The
experimentation phase?
we're doing a fair amount of this would be diffusion based AI solutions, not generative models per se that we understand with ChatGPT or similar, but we're using those to specifically adapt our videos. We're using voice cloning and video changing
Nice.
technologies that can at scale create the solutions that we need for our students. And the feedback from them is out of this world. These are, for example, in some of our Southern California districts, we're bringing these Spanish classes. They're more alive than they've ever been before, meaning when a student is listening to it in another language, whether it's Spanish or Arabic or Mandarin,
Yeah,
the voice and the video match. It feels like it's specifically curated for them, and it's
perfect.
increasing that engagement, which for us means students are learning, they're finishing their courses and they're getting those credits they
Yeah,
need to graduate.
that's great. You know, I'm curious, as you're getting feedback on creating this customized program for the student, what was the one that kind of surprised you the most? Right as you rolled it out, I'm sure you had hypotheses about this is going to work and
Yeah.
this is not going to work. I'm curious what you're hearing from the students itself, as in, oh, this one is much better than this one.
Well, I think we kind of had a vision of what an end product might look like. The reality was that we didn't know what that student would feedback would be along the way. So, an example of this is that we
Right,
could think about a video that you watch, you have the option to put subtitles on. So now you can read what's being said in another language. You have the ability
right,
to then dub that video. So now you can hear it, maybe a generic voice, but it's now dubbed in another language, but it still doesn't match, right? The lips don't match, doesn't really, the tenor maybe of the voice itself, tone of the voice doesn't really
right.
match what's happening on the screen. And then we have in video text as well that is in English. So there are all of these checkpoints along the way that we had to go and learn from students where was the right level of investment to get them the most engaged and to generate the most light and feedback. And what we
Mm,
found so far is that the voice cloning with the tonal inflections, with the lip dubbing, has clearly created a lot of delight for our students. I've personally gotten to sit with them.
got it.
But I'll be honest,
Perfect.
we're working on ways to translate, text that's odd or askew angles at scale so that we can bring that But that's actually not a blocker for students because we have to go back to, oh, well, they're
Well,
listening to the instructor. They're actually getting
yeah,
to see it in
right,
English in that particular, and it's actually
right.
helping them on that English language journey. And it's been a really great thing to watch and learn from our students along the way.
Perfect, perfect. Let me go back into just I'm double back on it. So as you're experimenting, as you're building out these new products and you're getting feedback, what has been the biggest challenge? I mean, generative AI is still very new. We're only a year and a half, depending on who you ask, or 2 years into it. What has been the challenge for you? And I know you run a very lean, small, agile team. So I'm curious, being on the forefront, what has been the hardest part of this, and what are you doing to overcome it?
I'll call out two things. It's a great question. I think it's important for us all. And these probably are familiar to many of the folks watching this. The first one is obvious. It's the rapid evolution of the technology. And it's
Yeah,
really important to take a what's next kind of attitude. To be perfectly honest, when I started this journey back almost year and a half ago, we knew we had generative AI tools in the market. We knew there was some things happening in the space around video, but
right.
nothing like what we're seeing today. And had I not pressed on those early experiments and waited for the technology to mature, then we would be significantly behind all of the learning, the market opportunity, and the value we could create for our students. So the just recognizing that that rapid development that's happening requires a little bit of a kind of a leap of faith. Thinking about where the technology is likely to be in 6 months,
Yeah,
building towards that. I mean, sure, we can think about where it's going to be in 3 to 5 years, but really practically speaking, 6 months from
yeah,
now, and you might be wrong, but you're going to learn a lot all along that way. So that it's shifting and evolving so much,
yeah,
it creates a lot of challenge there. I think
yeah.
there's,
I agree. Better to get hands dirty now, so you're ready for the future, right? As opposed to waiting for the future and then because then you're already behind,
yeah, totally. Right. And
right?
the other is we're just at the point in education, I would say in most industries where quality matters. You compress
Yeah,
it to a certain point, and we just still do require that human touch. When we're putting something in front of a student, the facts have to be right. The pedagogy needs to be relevant and meaningful.
yeah,
And so, we're figuring out that balance and we're still on that journey. Like, how much can we rely on fairly sophisticated ways of interacting with our AI models? And, at what, like, which frontier models do we use? How much open source we use, and trying to tune it
mm,
so that we get the right level of feedback, the highest possible quality. And then where do we need to put human reviewers in before it goes to students? So that's
yeah,
just an ongoing challenge.
yeah, and I mean, that's not an easy challenge, right? Because a lot of people are worried about the quality and the relevancy of the responses that
Right.
you get from AI, right? How are you actually overcoming that? I know you mentioned that you actually have teachers in the middle reviewing the content. Are there any other things that you're doing to just make sure that you're putting out the best quality that you possibly can?
Yeah, I mean, one very practical thing we do. So take curriculum development, for example. So we'll have a lead who's working on it, but they're working with a set of like tools internally that are calling multiple
Mhm.
models that both generate content and then go through 2 to 3 rounds of fact checking and citation. So we're
Mm,
actually using different models to iterate through to make sure that what we're putting is at least getting to a degree. Let's call it 98% accuracy so that the human reviewer is
that's pretty
now
good.
coming in and making sure like they're only tackling that last 2%. They're validating the rest work. But that
2%.
multi-model validation checking is proving to be pretty effective overall.
So you're actually using 2 models. One generates, one actually does the fact checking to find the resources, or are you and then you use a human, so you actually have a
In some
three-step
cases,
process,
it's
yes?
a 3 model approach too, to be honest.
Oh,
Like
wow, okay.
we take the quality of our curriculum really seriously, and so we find
Yeah,
that just that 3rd pass, the generative pass, like a, first quality pass and second quality pass is what's
yeah.
producing the most relevant content.
I think that's great. I mean, I think most people don't realize that you can actually not the models you can just use the model for generation, but you can actually use a model to actually check, and you can use different models to check
Right.
for the old models, and so your models work for you. And then, of course, I think having a human in the loop is the most important part, right? As you guys are rolling out new features, I'm curious if you can share what are you most excited about? I mean, if you just look at your roadmap for the next 6 months, because you can't go beyond 6 months where you are now. I'm curious, what excites you the most?
What excites me the most? So probably the fact that being a teacher is really difficult. My wife was a teacher. I worked in schools for 18 years. So I have an acute sense of the challenge of presenting a lot of
Yeah,
data to a teacher and saying, go make sense of this data, figure out which student needs which thing. So, we
yeah,
are dedicated alongside of this effort to really produce the highest quality courses that generate the most engagement and academic learning and outcome for our students. We're particularly focused on then how do we deliver the insights and the management to the teachers so that they're not spending a lot of
mm,
time grappling with, well, what does this mean? So that kind of insight generation that sits at the intersection of some of our standard, like just surfacing insights out of our standard data models. How do we use ML? How do we use AI to start to allow free-form exploration of that data? How do we use it to
yeah,
understand what course the teacher is teaching or how often they log in to bring the right insight time,
mhm,
just kind of really working on creating incredibly delightful educator experiences. That's super
yeah.
exciting for all of those that I worked with that were teachers and are still teachers.
I think that's awesome. One last question. I know we're almost out of time. So there's a lot of product leaders and chief product officers who are experimenting with AI, dabbling with it. Some are further ahead, some are just starting, so to speak. I'm curious, as you've gone through this journey in the last year and a half, any lessons learned or anything you would like to share with them just to make their life a little bit easier?
Yeah, I think the one that I would call out most importantly is challenge yourself, challenge your leaders to
Mm,
stop talking about AI. And I know that sounds counterintuitive in a conversation like, but what I mean by
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
is I think our hyper focus is a set of industries, no matter which industry you're in, on how does AI transform work. Actually, in some
Yeah,
cases, hampers our ability to leverage AI to its maximum. What it's doing is it's creating
mm,
these pathways to the future that pass through AI checkpoints. Like, well, what can it do now? What will it do in 6 months? As I was saying, right? What will it do in 3 years?
yeah,
I think
yeah,
if we said, well, let's actually challenge ourselves to think about the future, a future unbounded by the tech we have now, and just say, what
yeah,
what creates the most change? What creates the most growth? Where are people now? What do they need from us? And we can always, map to that using incredible technologies like generative AI
yeah,
and diffusion AI models and other things that are going to come into that conversation. So I really think that I just want to make sure that our creativity and our problem solving and experimentation use AI as a powerful tool, but we're not
yeah,
specifically trying to force AI,
yeah.
especially in places where it might hamper our efforts.
Yeah, it's almost like using AI for AI's sake, right? And so it is in many ways, I agree with you, very limiting because then it's a very narrow focus. And that's why I kind of like the idea about how you start off this conversation with let's talk about big picture and then let's kind of go into how AI is helping you. Any other lessons learned? I love the first lesson because I think that is sometimes as product leaders, we do get myopic on technology, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's number one. I'll just leave it with this. It's if you're experimenting, you're probably not experimenting enough. If you're giving a timeline to try something, it's probably too long. This thing does
Yeah,
shift and change so much that the impetus on us as product and technology leaders is to continue to go through that learning process that's critical
yeah,
to finding the right solution. And I talk to so many people that, it's a month or 2 months or 6 months. Like there are these long-term targets and that loosens the feedback mechanism that's so important to making the best use of this.
yeah.
So yeah, just shorten those feedback cycles. If challenge yourself to move faster and iterate quicker through different ways of approaching the problems with AI.
Perfect. I think that's a great place to end. Thank you very much, Joel. This has always been fun.